obviously there's a lot of news to cover, but I think the one that Ohio State fans are most concerned about right now are these rumors around Bo Jackson. What's the latest that you're hearing, and where does all this seem to stand as we look at it right now?
Yeah, as we sit here right now on Friday morning, there are still, negotiations. There's still an offer. From Ohio State's perspective, what they view as a very competitive offer for Bo Jackson's position, Bo Jackson's stature with the Buckeyes. Above market is the way that they view it. Bo Jackson and his camp had come in, asking for a significant raise, which he's well within his rights to do because he had a fantastic freshman season. He was one of those guys who sort of, relatively speaking, took a little bit less to, hope that it paid off down the road and that he could get a bigger deal and a bigger role with the Buckeyes moving forward. So he certainly has some leverage in that respect, and it feels like that there's just been a little bit of an impasse based on what Bo Jackson's camp's number is and where Ohio State is willing, how far they are willing to go with this. And I know that one of the most popular arguments is that, well, Ohio State has an endless amount of money and they should just pay whatever it takes to keep players. I don't agree with that because there isn't a limitless amount of money. And, we've already seen, and I want to be clear with what you guys and everybody listening on 97.1 The Fan, like when it comes to actual numbers, I've not seen the contract, and I don't report on NIL deals for student athletes anyway with their private contractual information. If agents want to leak that or players want to confirm that, so be it. I won't. So if we're saying, well, what is the amount of money that we're quibbling over? I can't say that definitively because I'm not in that room, and I won't. But I know that there's a limit that Ohio State feels that it has reached, and if Bo Jackson does not want to take that offer, I think we'll find out an answer relatively quickly, and then Ohio State will move forward happily with Bo in the fold, or they will move into the transfer portal.
When you look at the moves in the transfer portal, what do you think? It looks to me as if they're really focused on. It's not about retaining some of those wide receivers and some of these guys that weren't going to be starters, because I understand that, everybody has a price, and if Ohio State's not willing to match their price for a guy who they don't see as a starter, then so be it. And that's why you see so many people in the portal. I understand that. Do you think that their focus is on the trenches?
Yeah. The number of offers and the number of visits that have happened, most of that has happened on the defensive line, Tyvis. They're not really putting any emphasis on the offensive line because of the retention efforts with Carson Hensman and Austin Sareveld. Those guys could go off to the NFL draft. I think they'd be better served staying. We'll see if that is ultimately their decision, because as T-Bone teed it up there, the other part that's going on all at once is the NFL draft deadline is Wednesday. So everything on this calendar is just like spinning like crazy, and there's fires all over the place that you have to put out. But back to your question, Tyvis, there is a strong emphasis and a push being made on the defensive line, and part of that is related to the efforts to keep Caden McDonald, which it sounds like they will not be able to do as his stock continues to climb. Kenyatta Jackson looks like he's in a better position, for at least for Ohio State's perspective, to keep him around, and that would be a massive deal. The pickup yesterday out of the transfer portal from Wisconsin, Christian Allegro, he can also assist with some of that as a stand-up edge threat, in addition to being a linebacker who James Laurinaitis can move around. So they're working on that, and really it is a lot of that effort has to be done on the defensive side, because this offense is returning almost everything. And the other part that you mentioned at the start, Tyvis, is that Ohio State is paying a lot for its starters, and it is trying to keep its top backups happy. The shift that I think we all have to come to terms with, maybe philosophically, is that you're going to start having the way that Ohio State would pay and the way that they will play players in the season is going to look more like an NFL roster. And that will be, frustrating for Ohio State fans, for Ohio State coaches that are used to having nothing but 4 and 5 stars off the bench. And that was the biggest edge that the program had. The days of teams that had the depth like the one that you played on a decade ago, Tyvis, those are not really feasible financially in this current landscape. And so you're going to take that money that you're spending. Ohio State's going to they're going to have one of the more expensive rosters in college football, but I think it will start to be an emphasis placed on 40 to 50 players instead of 60 to 70.
Austin Ward joining us on the Brian Heating and Cooling Systems Fan Guest Hotline. I have plenty of questions about the portal, but one of the things that I have to ask about is I haven't heard a lot of news about it. Where do you think this program lands on hiring an offensive coordinator? Do you think that answer is going to be just roll with the staff that's there? Do you anticipate them going outside of the building? Is the NFL a possibility, bringing someone in from there? What's the latest you're hearing on that?
Yeah, on that front, which, again, everything happening all at once, I think that it is an option on the table for Ryan Day to handle that in-house. We have Cortez Hankton already in there at wide receiver. He doesn't address the play calling situation for Ohio State. And I think when you're looking ahead to the future, could Keenan Bailey and Billy Fessel be offensive coordinators? Tyler Bowen has called plays in his past. Yes. Is that the best approach for Ryan Day to take his hands fully off the wheel, looking at the schedule that's ahead, looking at the talent that is on this Ohio State offensive roster for next year? I think he needs a head coach of the offense that he trusts, just like he has a head coach of the defense, which he's also working to retain in Matt Patricia, which is a whole other conversation. But I think ultimately Ohio State will get there. I think the NFL carousel spinning as well plays into this. I think the type of candidate that Ryan Day would want to pursue for that may or may not be currently available based on other offers, based on if their teams are playing. I think what the Buckeyes want to do, what Ryan Day wants to do, is to get through this stretch with the transfer portal, with the roster retention, and then let some of that dust settle in the Woody and then also at the NFL level, and then make a decision there. You look back at the timeline for some of those hires in the last couple of years. You got Bill O'Brien in the middle of January, but Chip Kelly came basically middle of February, right before camp. Matt Patricia was a similar deal a year ago. So I would love for everything to be wrapped up as quickly as possible on all of these fronts, but I do think that we might need to have a little bit of patience. I'm trying to have that. There's not going to be hourly updates on coordinator candidates or getting everything done. I do think ultimately, though, Bone, that will be what Ryan Day settles on, because it's too important, and him remaining in a CEO role is too vital to the future of Ohio State for him to not take that approach.
Why not, Austin? Why can't we have? I don't want hourly updates. I want minutely updates. I want secondly updates.
I get it.
I want push notifications coming out of my ears. Like, I want everything. Give it to me now. All the news, all the info. Never sleep, Austin. You hear me? Never.
I'm working on that front. No doubt about that. It's and look, everything they do with the college football calendar, Bone, every time they make it worse. I mean, this is just not how it should be. It's not fair to anyone involved. I'm not talking about me. Coaches, players making decisions. It was what was wrong with giving them an opportunity to go through spring and then reevaluate? Yes, I know it sucked that we could have changes to the roster in January and then a different roster in May, but is this feasible for anyone?
I think the gamble was literally like, if the players have to go through spring ball, or like if they have to make the decision now, a lot of them will want to stick around and just see what they can do in spring ball. And we're now finding this 1-year experiment. No, they do not want to stick around.
100% wrong. And, and everyone is having to learn that in real time. So the other part of this conversation, Bone, and I know you guys are up against it here, but Ohio State had just adjusted its philosophy by signing 28 kids in the recruiting class a month ago and spending a lot of money to do so. And to go back to what Tyvis was talking about with, trying to pay all of your players in your roster, if they're not going to be on the field as freshmen, it no longer makes sense to use that investment, because if you're paying anybody, they need to be producing on the field. And some of what Ohio State, if you're looking at this and we want and can be critical about the roster building approach that sits right now in the transfer portal, it is because a lot of money is tied up in players who are probably not going to play in that true freshman class. And that's one of the few times that I could look at this and say, well, that Ohio State did something to be more aggressive a month ago. And now here's the repercussions. And that's the tricky balance they're trying to navigate right now.
There you go. A Ward Sports on Twitter. Follow him there and on all platforms on YouTube. Austin Berm, they'll have the latest for you. Thanks, Austin. We appreciate it. I know you're busy, buddy. Thanks for doing this. Take care.
No problem.